Well, good morning, ladies. Let us start with prayer. God, we just thank you for this time. We thank you that we can come together and we can just talk about motherhood and what that looks like with you, Lord. And so just be in our conversation, Lord. Bless this time that we have together in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you for joining me, Honolulu and Cheryl, two of my good friends here. And we're going to talk about motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first question I want to ask you guys is, how has motherhood impacted your relationship with God? Which I know we can talk 2 hours on just that question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about becoming a mom and all of the books, we have the blueprint, which is the Bible, but it doesn't really help us so much in motherhood necessarily.
I think it gives you a whole different perspective on that unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing that whatever you do, God's going to love us is hard for you to really get until you have kids. And then you go, oh, I get it. Like there's nothing. Yes. And there's nothing that they could do that could ever change my love for them. And so it just gives you a deeper understanding how God truly loves us so much, fully, everything about us, because not only would I do anything for my kids, but there's nothing that would ever cause me to stop loving them fully.
Of course. Yeah. I was actually one of those moms where it's like, I need a repair. How do I put them to sleep? Exactly. I read all those books, how to put them to sleep, a timeline, and of course it doesn't work that way.
Yes, it never does.
But I wasn't strong in faith when I had my first two kids. It was like more in the middle where I started that relationship with God and how much it changed. It's totally opposite, just because you're the way I care for them. It's not just about me anymore or them. It's more about like how to influence them and how to grow them. In some way, I was listening to podcasts. It's like starting your own church in a way, because your kids in general, they're not only for you, but it's for the people that you're surrounding them with, and like the friends and their family that they're going to be just talking to and just relating to, pretty much. Yeah.
Their influence on.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word.
Their friends.
Mm-hmm.
What impact are they going to have in this world as human beings? Like, we all want our children to grow up and just be productive adults.
Yes, yes.
But the in-between years, getting them there can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And, you guys know I have 4, and none of them we parented the same way, because they're so vastly different.
Yeah.
You have 2 parents, but it's just not the same. And so I do want to just ask you guys, what does that look like for you in parenting? When you have to have those hard conversations, when you have to just kind of, they're not happy with you, and how do you acknowledge that when God is also not happy with something that we've done and the way he corrects us? How does that correlate into parenting?
We talk a lot about, I am helping you become a better person because I love you. I don't set rules and boundaries because I want to make your life miserable. I love you so much that I want you to have the best life. And so I have these rules. I have these, consequences, because I want you to be the best person that God created you to be. And then that also is like, when we look at God, we're like, well, why are there so many things that we have to follow, and why you have, but then he sees the bigger picture, and as a parent, we see the bigger picture for our child. There's so many things that we're correcting, but we understand why they might not, but we get it. This is so important. Whereas as a child of God, like there's so many questions I have. Why are you making me do this? Why are you telling me this? But he sees that bigger picture, like a parent to a toddler who you're like, I know why this is going to matter down the road.
Exactly. And for the biggest thing for me is just knowing I'm not alone, just because there are so many times where it's like, oh, this is a fail, like I shouldn't have gotten mad that much, or like I should have not said that or this or that. But it's always going circles when it comes to that. But it's like at the end, it's like God gave me everything I need to raise these kids, and I just have to remember that he's in me, and I need to believe in myself and in him, because just having that doubt, it kind of takes away from like I'm doubting him.
Yeah.
Let's kind of delve into that a little bit, because when you think of being a mom, like for some people it's natural. For some people it hasn't been a hard journey. For some people it has been a really hard journey, right? But when you think of being a mother, and we all have that idea of what people's perception is of our children and how it reflects on us, and it's like this constant mirror back in looking at us going, am I good enough? Is my parenting good enough? Are my children gonna be nice? Are they gonna be mean? Are they gonna be all these things? And you want to do these things that are going to create a kind human.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. But I find myself more often than not on this spiritual journey in motherhood, because everything that goes into parenting, you reflect back to yourself and you're like, okay, God, am I doing this right? Am I, it's just like a question, a constant question that's going on. What would you guys say? Do you guys have the same similar experiences with God, or you're like,
I definitely feel more judged by other moms. I feel like I see this pressure. Oh, you have to do everything right. Oh, you have to DIY everything. Don't buy some. You have to be able. And I think that it's important that we remember, like, raising their hearts is the most important part. And it's not having the perfect birthday party. It's not having the, it's how are their characters being, molded. And so I think that I just have to come back to that. I'm not being compared to all these other moms and who's,
Yes.
I think I just need to remember, okay, what are my kids learning? What are the values that I'm teaching? Where are their hearts at?
Definitely. That was pretty big in our family, because we have a very big family, and who are we to tell like our in-laws, my parents, or anyone older than me, like how to raise kids? But at the same time, it's like, every person is different. Our kids are different. And so at the end, it's more of like, what are our values?
Yeah.
What is most important to us? And every kid's different. It's like, what's important to them, and how do they work, and what gets them to cry, gets them to be happy, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember years ago, because our kids, Hanali, are a little bit older than yours. So when they were younger, going to the birthday parties, and I remember this one time where it might have been Abby, our little production person over there. Might have been Abby. I think it was Abby. We went to this birthday party, and they have the goodie bags, the favor bags that stress all the parents out, right? It's like, it's got to be better than the last birthday party you went to. And I just remember that she got a book, and she pulled it out of the bag and was like, that's it? And, as a parent, you're like,
yes.
Shut up. It's like, she was little. She was probably 4 or something. And I was just like, you be grateful for what you have. All of the mom things that you turn into.
Yes.
And when you see your mom coming through you, and you're like, oh, okay, that's so fun. And I'm like, I tried my hardest to get a revolt with the parents. Can we all agree that this is ridiculous? Can we all agree that it's your child's birthday. We don't need to give everybody else a gift.
Right.
Like, let's not like have this so expensive, you know? But I think that's just kind of society where it's like, you get a gift, you get a gift, and you get a gift. And it's like, but it's not your birthday. So, yeah, we've had some parenting, I don't know, corrections or along the way, and as the kids get older, it comes, there's nuances to it on but you know, that was, you know, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and there's still favors at
funny you say that. I was one of those moms. Well, I enjoyed it more because I liked being crafty, and I had like the cry cut and stuff like that, and like I love decorating. But then I did get caught in like, okay, this looks really cool on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But then that was like with my first two kids. Now with my third one, I don't know if I'm like too tired now or whatever. Exactly. But it's like they don't remember, they don't care, and it's like it's more of just having fun. And so now it's like more about trips and not worrying about that. And it's like me and my husband Richard, it's like, just don't show him the pictures from the other kids' birthdays.
But I think you said it so.
Adventure, right?
Yeah, you learn from the first ones, and then you realize they don't care. The little trinkets that come in those goodie bags get thrown away the next week. They, you know, aren't the memorable part of spending that quality time with their friends, being together. I have twins, so I only got to do it once, but I keep saying, oh, if I have another one, I'll do it right the next time. I just, you know, you learn as you go through all these experiences, and you're like, why did I put so much pressure on myself to do that? Or why did I spend so much money on this? They didn't even care. They liked the boxes more than the toys when they opened their Christmas presents. And so, yeah, just you definitely learn through going through it.
Yeah.
And then you get to do it all over again with grandkids. Where you're like, I get to spoil them because I'm a grandparent.
That's right.
Not that any of us are there yet, but you know, that's okay. Yeah, I think motherhood definitely challenges us in the best ways, and sometimes in the not so best ways, you know, because we never know what's around the corner. You know, you never know. But this idea of, that you talked about, like the unconditional love of our children, like when you think about that and realize that they can screw up really bad, and you're still going to love them no matter what.
Yes.
And it is a great picture to see how the Heavenly Father is looking at us. He doesn't look at us with like, the only thing he thinks about is how far did we mess up, how much we have strayed. He's like, come back to me, you know. And so I think that's the most, I think, beautiful part about being a mom is the fact that we can point them to the Lord in that, knowing when they fall, we're there to pick them up. When they make a mistake, we're there to teach them and help them learn from the mistake and grow. So when we think about our relationship with God and being a mom, how have you developed your relationship with your kids in relationship to having a loving father, but also having your earthly mom? And how has that played into?
For me, one of the biggest things I try to remember all the time is making a mistake is okay. Because when I was growing up, it was like my parents were perfect, or that's how exactly. And so with my kids, it's like, no, we're not perfect. It's okay to make mistakes, and you should make those mistakes, and that's what God teaches us. And so ever since we've been more strong in faith and just going to church, we've been taking more time with our kids, just praying with them, and just seeing like we make mistakes. So we as the parents fight, and it's okay to do all of that. It's okay to cry. It's okay to get mad, and because I feel like I was raising my kid, especially my daughter, where it's like I'm a perfectionist, and I see that in her from myself, and it's like, no, don't think like that. Like, you're far from that. Yeah.
It's okay to want to do well and to succeed and excel. But when it, all of us, when we're at our healthiest, it's great. But when we go to the other side where it's unhealthy and it becomes, I have to be perfect, I have to get everything right, then the deeper root issue, then you're looking at, okay, it kind of brings to the surface. Am I feeling loved? Am I feeling wanted in this moment? Like, what is the root cause of why I am trying to do this so well? Is it because I want people to like me? I want people to see what I can do? What is the driving force for that? And sometimes we know what it is, and sometimes God has to keep massaging that out of us and digging up the root, if you will. And it's just a fun yet challenging thing to look back, and we are all who we are because of how we were raised.
Yeah, exactly.
We bring in what our parents gave us, good, bad, and indifferent. But some of the things we repeat.
Yes. And
some of the things we don't want to repeat, but we still repeat. And some of the things, like, we definitely want to repeat. And in being a mom, looking back at all the struggles that my mom went through, and perspective is everything. She didn't always get it right, but she did her best.
Exactly.
And we're not always going to get it right. Like our oldest, we always tell him, "Sorry, son, you were the guinea pig. Congrats. I'm sorry. Love you lots." Because when it's the first one, you do some things, and for you did it all at the same time.
I know
twins,
they're the guinea pigs, and
sorry,
yeah.
I think that's the best part, though, like learning from your parents, good and bad, just because for me, what came out of it is just being able to spend time with my kids, just that one-on-one time, especially since there's 3 of them. We try to do like at least a date with them one-on-one, me and my husband, just because we never had that time with our parents that we always wanted. And at the end, it's always the relationship. Their love language was gifts. Money and like how to take care of us. And for me, it's like now that was their love language, for me, what I desire most is the quality time. And so that's what I'm making sure I provide for my kids.
That's good. Yeah.
And I love what you said earlier about making sure they know it's okay to make mistakes. I think we role model so many of those behaviors that we want to either change from our past, or that we want to make sure we instill them. And, saying you're sorry, apologizing, taking responsibility. And as we apologize to them when we make mistakes, as we say, this is how we learn, it teaches them that that's okay and that's part of life. But I think that quality time is so much more valuable than, gifts and presents, because that's what they're going to remember.
Yes.
The things, they toss, they forget that they even had those toys. They forget that they even had those, things, but they don't forget memories.
Yeah. I think, for us, especially because we're transitioning into that next phase.
Yes.
Right? Where our kids are in college and, then getting married, and, I have one that's married, and as they transition into that, you want that quality time so much more. You're like, okay, I don't want to miss these moments.
Yeah.
And, my upbringing was similar, where my mom loved to buy things.
Yeah.
And she didn't have time because she was working so much.
Yeah.
But she wanted us not to struggle with finances, so she would work, and that's how she poured out her love, was like anything we wanted, she would just go buy, And luckily we didn't want like big expensive things, but but I just remember even with 4 kids, when we were talking about where they have you, like, quality time is needed for all of your kids, but going back to those love languages, and for some kids that does speak to them a gift.
Yeah.
And for other ones, you might as well, you could buy them a Ferrari and they just wouldn't care.
Yeah.
And so, kind of learning how to dive into what is your kid's love language and how can I speak their language.
Yes.
You have to do it uniquely for each one of them. And I think that's beautiful that you take the time to, I know you go on family trips and the adventures, a birthday adventure, I think is far better than a party.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I'm going to dive into a sensitive topic.
Okay.
Because we all have lost a parent at this table, and for you, your father, not that long ago, and for us, our moms. And how does that play into life as a mother? Losing a mother, losing a father, when you lose a parent, and one, the grief that goes into that, but two, how do we, like you were talking about, just being open and honest with our kids, and when we cry, when we have conflict, like, we don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hard to, miss that relationship.
Yeah.
But it's also hard knowing how fragile life is, and knowing that our kids, like, we want to be here for our kids forever. And when that gets taken away for you in an earthly sense, how has that impacted your relationship with your kids and with God?
I think, like you said, it just makes the time with them more precious, because you do see, like, oh, this can be taken away in a snap. And so those things that you thought were so important aren't so important anymore. And, spending more time together, instilling in their lives, especially as they're, adults now and getting ready to start their own families. But I just feel like our time together is so precious, and cherishing every moment, and really, like, putting our priorities in order so that we can make sure that the things that house getting clean, this and that project. So, that isn't, I know there's always going to be laundry. Yeah. And and just make sure those, quality time is the top priority.
I agree. Ever since my dad passed away, we make sure to spend more time with my mom, my in-laws, just the people who are left. And as hard as it was, it was a good lesson for us as a family, and my siblings and I as well, just because it brings us all closer together. And I do remember my daughter saying, because at the same time, like, we were going through so many difficulties while my dad was going through cancer. We started going to church more, just leaning on God more, and I know that's what he wanted. But I say that because looking back to it, my daughter says, like, yeah, you guys are much nicer now. and it's just a lot of lessons. And during that time, it was like a lot of crying, a lot of emotions. And I remember my daughter saying, like, since it was new to them, Mom, I couldn't cry because I don't want to show people that I'm crying. And ever since then, that's going back to just, it's okay to cry, it's okay to make mistakes. And so it's just like, just reiterating that to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because unfortunately, grief is a part of this life, and letting our kids be okay with that, it's hard. It's hard. But what would you guys say? Have you walked through life with friends who are struggling to be a mom, have lost a child? What would you say is encouragement to them? Because as mothers, I remember vividly going through postpartum depression with Abby, our third, and I remember there was a moment at which I was like, who am I if I'm not a wife and a mother? And I think oftentimes, even with Mother's Day, when we have people that haven't been able to conceive, we have people that maybe have lost a child, and this realization in postpartum depression where I had to take a hard look at me in the mirror because I didn't recognize who I was 3 children in, and I was, who am I if I'm not a wife and a mother? And ask God that question, like, who am I if I'm not a wife, if I'm not a mother? Because sometimes in motherhood, we can be all consumed with, this is our identity, this is our role, and then, you know, as we're transitioning from, you know, we're going to be empty nesters in the next few years, that could really, like, it could be a whole nother cycle of postpartum, you know?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too, because I feel like you said, we just get consumed in parenthood. You get in those early years where your whole life revolves around your kids. You really don't have any time for yourself. I remember thinking, okay, if I can just get them to sleep, I could have 30 minutes to like just sit and be. Like, I just remember those times where I just was, everything was about the kids. I was volunteering in their, you know, activities, teaching Sunday school, doing, you know, everything for them. And yeah, you do lose a sense of yourself while you're, you know, just so in everything. But I think that that's the time to remember that there's moments in life. And I feel like that time period, I know you're in it, but those early years flew by so fast. And now being on the verge of, you know, an empty nester and kids, you know, starting, I look back and I'm like, wow, that went by like a blink of an eye. And when you're in it, you feel like it is taking forever. But afterwards, I'm like, oh, I just need to warn moms. It goes by so fast, like stop. And yeah, I feel like you do need to take some time for yourself. You do need to make sure that you still, you know, can think about who you are as a child of God, as a person, as, you know, your individual self. But I feel like that time where you are mom and that's your, you know, whole purpose, just really flies by quickly. And as you're in the middle of it, just remembering they grow up so fast and just,
biggest thing, just leaning on God with strength and just to get through it all. I have a lot of friends who have had a hard time conceiving, having a baby or whatnot, but it's just, this is the best time to lean on Him. It's just trust everything on Him, no matter how much it doesn't make sense. You may not see the big picture. God knows your story, and it's just a reminder that it's not over. Just think about like what's present right now and what you have, and be thankful for that, because God has bigger plans for you. It's not just about being a mother. You have your own purpose too, aside from a mother.
Yeah. And I think especially when you're in it and you're maybe dealing with the pain of loss, or the pain of not yet having your prayers answered and fulfilled in the way that you were hoping. It can be really difficult to do those things, right? Yet when we open it up and surrender, God meets us in that. And, you know, I remember walking through vividly with the different people who have had stillborns, who have lost children in unfathomable ways, and even infertility. And on the other side of that is God's beauty and God's peace and joy, and for women to understand that God defines who we are. He says who we are, outside of whether or not we're single, whether or not we're married, whether or not we have children or don't have children. And I think it's hard when we have to step outside of our pain to see what God has for us in that moment.
Yes.
But it's really important that, you know, we can step outside and ask him that question. What do you have for me in this?
Yeah.
Because it's usually so much greater of a miracle than we were even praying for. I think it's a gift for sure, but he has so many more gifts that he wants to give to each of us, and sometimes it looks differently. And I know for some of my friends that means they mentor or they foster or they do different things so that they can have what they feel like God is asking them to in motherhood, but it doesn't have to always look the same because we're uniquely made.
Yes.
So when I think of empty nesting, and you're going to be there soon, I remember this book. I think I was pregnant with Elijah, with our first, and a dear friend gave me this book, and it said diapers, pacifiers, and other holy things. And I was like, that's an interesting title. And in this book, it's like little snippets. So like if you are nursing or you're like, finally the kids go to sleep and you have like 2 seconds and you're like, oh, the garbage needs to be taken out, you know? And it's a book that has just short little devotionals that says, you know, think of the mundane tasks like taking out the garbage, turning it back to him. Thank you for washing all the gunk out of my life. Thank you for cleansing me. How blessed I am to be able to have a full house of people, you know. And so I think in this season that we find ourselves in parenthood, whatever seasons those are, it can be easy to inwardly internalize, this is so hard. This is so painful. This is so mundane over and over again. But inviting God into those spaces that are so mundane and boring or so repetitive, he gets the glory. He gets to shine where we are just tired. He gets to say, daughter, you are loved. You are precious. This is a gift, even though it's a season that you want to put back on the shelf.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's hard when you're in the midst of it. But if you can have somebody encourage you, if you can have someone remind you, if you can have someone give you that little, support, it's important to, remember that.
Be in community and just be around people. And sometimes you go through those things so you can be the witness or you can share your story to other people.
Yeah. I think that community is such a big, important thing as a mom. You just need support, and you need other moms that you can say, I don't know if I'm going to make it, and you need other moms to say, hey, my kids do the same thing. It's not, it's not just you. But just to, encourage, support, just help you through those times where you're not sure if you're going to make it.
Yeah, what is community meant to you guys? Because I know you guys all both have community. How did you find that community? How did you seek it out, or did it seek you out?
That's a great question, because my family has been through waves where it's like we lost the community that we thought we were leaning towards and like we loved, but at the same time, looking back to it, it's not the community that God wanted for us. And knowing that now, it's like, no, when we were around that community, we had to be other people or pretend we were like other people to feel accepted. And so God kind of made us go towards another route where we would have never thought of, and now we're surrounded by people like you guys, where we feel loved and we can be ourselves and we can be truthful and just be more vulnerable than always having that mask on.
That's good.
Yeah, for me, I joined a lot of mom groups when the girls were little.
mom
I
groups?
joined the Mothers of Twins, Mothers of Multiples group. They were called the Fun Moms, Fremont Union City and Newark Moms. And same thing, there's so many moms, and just finding the ones that you can be vulnerable with, that you can be honest with, that you can. And I have been in the same, I guess we started out as a play group, but I've been with the same group of moms for 21 years now. I mean, we all, had our babies and used to, get together and just line up all the car seats, and we just be like, okay, how are you doing? Just exhausted, to the point where we would meet at parks or at people's houses and let the kids play, to the point where the kids were on their own, and now us as moms just meet and go out to dinner, have coffee, whatever. Sometimes it's just a text chain on the, phone, but just having those people that you can really trust to, have your back, and you can, they'll be there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know for us, when the kids were in school, I felt like I was in high school all over again, where you were like dating
Yes.
like, these other relationships, and you're like, well, they like me. I don't know, this is awkward. I don't know if I'm like what they're looking for. And in the Bay Area, there's careers. You get your career, and then you have your kids, and we did that kind of backwards. And so we looked like we were 12, when we were like having these kids.
That's
and,
me.
We're like 22, 23, and people are looking at us, and we're doing the eye look, like, they're in their pajamas. Why are they in their pajamas? Like, all the things. And you're like, are they looking at me? Am I going to fit in? And I think no matter if you're a mom or you're, just as a female, I mean, I'm sure the guys do that too, but I think it's easier for guys because they're like, just whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But for me, I just remember it felt like middle school, high school again. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that too, similarly in church, when you join a group,
Yes.
and you're like, okay, let me find my community, let me find my people. And I'm like, wait, this is awkward. I don't know if these are my people, and I don't know if I'm their people. I'm not, everyone's cup of tea. And so when you do find those people, it's that much sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, this just feels like home.
Exactly.
I can let my hair down. I can wear my slippers, and they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be a certain way, and I can be vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How much has it meant to you guys to be able to have a place where you could be vulnerable and you didn't have to be on?
Mm-hmm.
And have you been able to share your faith with those, moms groups outside of church, the different relationships at work that we have, the struggles, whether you're a Christian or not, the struggles are the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so have you been able to be in these relationships and share what it could look like with God?
I find that even the smallest thing, like I'm in a book club, and there aren't other believers in the book club, and we've been meeting for years and just really close friends. And even when they're going through hard times, I'll have them like text me, hey, I don't believe in God, but can you pray for me? Mm-hmm. And so just,
isn't that fun?
yes. And just knowing that they see my faith, they see that, that's a big part of me. And when they're struggling, they will say, I could use some prayer. Like, I don't know about, and I just love that that's the perception they have, that, when I'm having a hard time, let's turn to God. And so I always say, absolutely. And, can we talk? Can we, do more? But I think that's important for us to just be that witness to those people that are looking, still in the searching process, still in the question process, and not come down forcefully, but just, be the one that they feel comfortable to say, hey, tell me more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a lot of friends who are not a Christian or just faith-based in general. So we've invited them to church, but it doesn't always turn out the way you want it. So we just like to just not keep our faith a secret. We make sure that when they're over for meals, our kids are praying, we're praying in front of them, just kind of showing that. And I love that we have instilled those habits with our kids, because when my daughter was actually in science camp, and that was her first time away from us, same with her best friend, first time away, and they cried every day, but but she would tell me she would crawl into her best friend's bed, and they would pray together. She would pray, and I was like, yeah, I did do something right, kind of thing. Yes. And it's like a little stuff like that, where like parents might be more like, no, I'm not faithful, this is my faith, I'm not Christian, compared to kids where it's like they may be more moldable and stuff like that. And so just sharing the faith any way we can, just by being ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. That's beautiful.
I was just going out to dinner, and it was a little takeout place, and the lady behind the counter, as she's making my food, she's like, do you remember me? And she looked.
You love that?
I
know. Like, okay, was it sports? Was it this club? Was it...
And she said, you used to take me to youth group, and my daughters would invite all their friends, and I even had to get a bigger vehicle, and my husband and I both had to drive because we were picking up kids from all over, Fremont, to bring them to youth group. And she was one of the girls that they had brought, a bunch of times, and she's like, I remember the car rides were so fun, laughing with everybody. I really loved that youth group. That meant so much to me. This was such a, and it's been so long, but that impacted her. And sometimes you don't even see the impact you have on other people that are in your community, but not, you just never realize like those lasting effects of just sharing your faith with them. And
actually, that reminds me, that's probably part of how I was brought to God, because my best friend who was Christian would bring me to church. And to me, it was like just hanging out with her. Yeah. And like, because I grew up very Catholic, and my parents were very strict. And so going to her, it's like, oh, this is how a Christian church is like. And just seeing how different it is, and just being around her, I was just influenced without being forced. So, yeah.
And how old were you at that point?
Middle school.
Mm-hmm. And then you came back to faith?
College. A little after college. But it was like ever since then, I would just go back and forth Catholic and Christian, and just pretty much open, where I felt more comfortable, and just felt like where the relationship was with God was taking me.
Now, what do you think was the catalyst or the change that happened when Alea and Caden, because that's when early on in their childhood you weren't all in with your faith? What was that switch? What did God do in that time? Was it through trial? Was it through, do you remember, like, what was the epiphany where you're like, our family's going to change our trajectory?
A lot of trial, a lot of struggle, and I just felt like I need to find a church, because our church just felt like it was very fear-based, and you had to do this, you had to do that. And I didn't understand that, and that's how I was raised. And so I was pretty much open, knowing my experience from going to a Christian church, especially since I felt very comfortable and welcome and not judged. And it was like more about just worshiping. That's how I saw it as. Just worshiping, and I didn't have any rules that I had to follow. So when we went to a Christian church, and we just discovered, and just going through how many sermons, we just felt more connected to it. And that's when we made the switch as a family. And at the same time, we weren't trying to force our kids to be Christian or Catholic, because even at the time, our parents were like, why are you going to a Christian church, and stuff like that. But the fact that they got baptized just last year, and the fact that they made that decision all by themselves, it's like, oh my God, like I cried, like, and tried not to ugly cry at that moment, since there were so many cameras, but just that feeling, because when they said they were ready to get baptized, I was already questioning it, like, are you sure? Like, you're still young, like, do you understand this? But at the same time, it's like, who am I to tell them, and who am I to tell God that they're not ready?
And that's so amazing to have your kids like have their own faith. It's not just, oh, well, this is what mom says. It's we believe because we have the relationship with God that, you've helped us grow, but this is our faith.
Yeah, and they help me and my husband grow all the time, where it's like when we're not at our best. Like there's this one time where it was we were at a layover. It was 11 p.m. We hadn't had dinner yet. It was delayed for like how many hours, and so we were sitting at a restaurant, and the guy served everybody else except us, and then me and my husband just venting to each other like about this waiter, and my daughter goes, "Mom, he's also God's child," and it's like, I was like, okay, God. And it's just like, they're watching, they're reminding, they're their best reminder. It's like, okay, you're right. And it's like, just shut up though.
Then what do you say?
Yeah,
exactly. I think parenting can be the most humbling experience
Definitely.
of our lives.
Yes.
Where it's those times where they're just like, are you really happy? When the child becomes the adult and you're like, my bad, I'm so sorry.
They use your words back at you.
Exactly.
What are some of the phrases that you guys can think of? The one that is most common used that you're like, you'll never use it is, well, why? Because I said so. I just, I'm like, I'll never tell my kids that. And it's like, I remember this one moment where Abby is the most tenacious child, and it has served her so well because she, when she gets her mind set on something, she is all in, and it doesn't matter. Like, she will do it without, hesitation. Good or bad. And so I remember this one time where she was like, we have to do it this way, Mom. Like, it has to be this way. And I'm like, you're probably right that this is the better way to do it. But right now, I'm gonna call the trump card. I need you to do it my way, even if it's more imperfect than your way. Next time you can choose how to do it, but this time we're doing it my way, And I think it's just such a good picture of what God says to us, like, child, today we're gonna do it my way.
Yes.
Like, you've done it your way, and this time I'm not asking you if this is okay with you. I'm saying we are doing this, and we're doing it this way. Have you ever had that wrestle with God in that way, where you're like, okay, I want to be obedient, but can we do it this way? And it's like, you just know He's not asking you, He's telling you.
For me, it's a little different. I feel like when I start maybe experiencing something where I'm like, well, I can do this better, why is this person making these choices, what's going on there? Then God places me in their situation, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my, I was a teacher for 8 years before I had kids, and I, was so, I don't want to say judgmental, but I would look at these parents and go, oh, well, if they would parent their child better, their child wouldn't act like that. And then God gave me some children who were very challenging. And I was like, you try everything in your whole little knowledge book and nothing works. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm sorry that I had all those thoughts, but it just gives you a different perspective. And sometimes being in someone else's shoes helps you to have more compassion and understanding. And God has this funny way of doing that to me. And every way I think, well, I would do that better. And then He puts me in that position, and I'm like, oh, okay. I see what you were meaning, God. So mine was a little twisted just because I needed to be in someone else's shoes to have more like, now I get it.
Yeah. But for the grace of God, there go I, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because for me, it's control. for me, and just having to I need to know what comes next kind of thing. And he's shown me in many ways that that's not how it works.
Yeah. It's control can be one of the most humbling things where God meets us in, because it's where we let go and where he shows up.
Yes.
And the letting go, really is such a definable surrender in life, where when you can truly release your parenting to God and go, Lord, I don't got this. I don't got this.
Yeah.
And I was holding on so tightly, and yet they were yours before they were mine.
Yes.
And so I'm releasing them to you, because he can do a far better job than we can.
Definitely.
There's a sense of pressure that's taken off at that moment. And even though you try to take back the reins and you're like, okay, but let me just do something with them for a little bit. And I'm like, I got this. But the relief and release of the pressure is just something that is needed.
Yeah.
Like a pressure cooker, when you turn the spout and it's letting out all this steam. I think that we need that as moms, where we can just have that pressure released and go, I don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
I'm not alone in this. God is here with us. And it's the most challenging, most beautiful thing that we get to do. And some days it seems like a gift, and some days it seems like we want to give back the gift. But I'm just thankful. I'm thankful for this conversation with you guys. Is there any last words that you guys would want to share as walking through motherhood and what it has done for your relationship?
It's just remembering that you are God's child. He has a story for you, your own journey, your own purpose. Because a lot of the times, like especially when we're motivating ourselves, it's like why. A lot of moms always say, my kids are my why. They're the reason why I do this, and this. But at the same time, God brought you before your kids. You were born before they were, and so he already had a plan for you. They are a part of it now, but it's not all about them.
And just speaking to their heart, like you said, finding their love language, finding the way that they are, bent, but also just making sure that they know that they are so fully loved, so fully cared about, and that they're allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to, but that they are just rooted in their faith, so that they know that no matter what, that's the most important thing. The bottom line is they're a child of God, and they are in his arms all the time.
Yeah, I think it goes back to where we started, right? That unconditional love that you have for your children, when that child is born or put into your life, like it's unconditional love. And it's so easy for us to give that to our children, but it's so difficult for us to receive it from our Heavenly Father.
Yes.
So true.
And so I just want to leave people with that you deserve, you are worthy to have his unconditional love, even if you're not a mom, even if you have children who are wayward, even if fill in the blank. You're a single mom. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're worthy of that unconditional love.
Yes.
And it's where he meets you, because one moment in his presence
changes everything.